Hey friends, welcome to The Well, our monthly gathering to support Christian leaders and pastors who are in the trenches of ministry together. You know, historically, wells were places in villages where people would come for refreshment and community. And really, that's our hope for you today as we gather together in God's presence, being refreshed in worship, prayer, and conversation about our own life and leadership. Our hope is that this content would spark deep and meaningful conversations with you as we process together what the Holy Spirit is saying to us as we continue to grow on our leadership journey. We hope you enjoy today's content.
Good morning and welcome to The Well. I have two wonderful guests here this morning, Sweis Ubles and Gardner, and they've traveled up from the valley to share a discussion this morning about the importance of Christian community among leaders for leader health. And anyways, for those who don't know Harry and Sweis, maybe we'll get them to start by just giving us a brief introduction about themselves.
Sure. I am a retired Baptist minister, but still very active in ministry, especially with a pastoral support, I think. I've recently been the president at Acadia Divinity College, and formerly, or before that, was involved with our Baptist Convention family as the executive minister. I'm married. We have 2 adult children, and we have 4 wonderful grandkids.
Yeah, wonderful. Sweis Ubles, I born and raised in Holland and moved to Canada as a young adult to farm, to pursue farming. God called me off the farm and ended up attending a Bible college in Alberta. Pastored a church there 12 years ago, came to Middleton, Nova Scotia, where I'm now pastoring Emmanuel Church right there in town, and been part of The Well ever since moving here, so I'm just grateful to be part of this.
Yeah, well, it has been fantastic to have your friendship, and the whole thrust, and we know it is to encourage one another.
Right.
And our God-given call, and we are friends in ministry, and those things, that friendship and that community is so important. It really is. I mean, I've really grown personally as over the years I've engaged among my friends, and it's been of great value. So we want to jump into 4 questions here in the next about 18 minutes or so, and then our guests around the wells are going to jump into some discussion around the table.
Sure.
So let's start off with this. Holistic well-being considers all aspects of our health, from spiritual to physical and mental. What role does peer support and connectedness play in our holistic well-being? And I'm going to ask Harry, you to jump in on that point and get the ball rolling, and maybe Sweis, you might have some things to throw on that point, but get us going, Harry.
I think, Dwight, what I've really appreciated about what I've seen of The Well is that it is a non-competitive environment. Yeah. And I think for pastors that can be such a blessing if they will be open and vulnerable for that, and it's so needed, because sometimes when we get together in pastors groups, it can be, well, how many did you have out on Sunday? And it's a competitive thing. But I think just as it is for all of us as Christians, to be in Christ is to be part of the body. You can't have the one without the other. There's no room for lone wolf Christianity. We're called to be in relationships with others. And in pastoral leadership, sometimes that takes intention, and it can be difficult sometimes to find peers and others who are really interested in what I would call quality conversations about our own lives and our ministries and our families. But without that, it's just plain tough. I think that people who try to go it alone it can just be really difficult.
Well, I'm sure you've been a denominational leader for many years. I'm sure in that time frame you would have seen leaders who found themselves isolated without appropriate community.
Right.
To the degree that actually your denomination was really innovative in committing an individual, Dr. Cheryl Ann Beals, to actually focus on leader health and creating community for leader health in the denomination.
And creating an environment where it's absolutely okay to be part of being mentored or to be part of a community of support, because sometimes it's the same in our marriages. We think some of these marriage enrichment events are only for people who are in difficulty, but that's not the case. It's about strengthening our relationships and understanding pastoral identity and ministry. So absolutely.
I remember years ago the comment from Andrew McRae when he was part of the Well before he passed, saying, you know, encouragement is the most fundamental need. Just such a fundamental need.
Absolutely.
So in what ways are our personal relationships outside of work different from the relationships that surround us in the churches, families, and communities we serve in? And Sweis, I'm going to toss that one over to you.
Yeah, I've been thinking about that question a bit, Dwight, and I guess the first thing that came to my mind was the more traditional advice of, like, you can't have friends in your church, and I don't know if I buy that. And maybe it's a thing of the past, and maybe things have changed within the church. But so making friends within the church, within my sphere of work, then it does have challenges. Sometimes the friend hat comes off, and the pastor hat's got to come on, and it can change a relationship, and I've experienced that. Yet at the same time, I spend so much of my time with these people, and I so come to love them. Why would I not want them to be my friends, right? So these things kind of, there's a challenge in that, and when I read the New Testament too, and I see Paul pouring his life into these different churches he's planted, and he expresses how much he loves these people, and it's like, yeah. So anyway, that was just one thing that came to my mind as I consider that question. But on the other hand, of course, it is wonderful to have friendships outside of church and immediate family. And they can be based on different things, different commonalities. Sometimes the commonality isn't like we are attending the same church or we're related, but the commonality is maybe a hobby, and it's refreshing to have those kind of relationships, and sometimes, of course, those friendships are really just because I just really like that person, and that may very well be the only thing that we really have in common. So I don't know if that helps, but
well, it seems to me, yes, it does help me. I think too, it seems to me there'd be certain things that you would process in friendships within the church that are more at the personal journey level sometimes, and others that are at a leadership level that you just need to have some outside perspective on. Any comments on that? Do you think that's valid?
I think it is, and I think this ministry of the Well, again, and this partnership that goes on and the fellowship that happens, which I said earlier, which is I see as a non-competitive environment. We were talking on the way in about the benefit that you certainly have had in a mutual friend of the Well in terms of Danny, and I as well have had that happen to me in terms of people who are in the circle, and sometimes they're not of the same denomination as I am, and other times they are. But yeah, and I think I'm with you. I've got enough gray hair that I'm with you on this business, and we've got other younger people this will be a good stimulating conversation for people to have in terms of friends outside the church you're serving compared to the friends who you have inside. What I'm most concerned about is that we do not develop a competitive environment, or that the church is the enemy. It's sort of like, make sure you have your own time. Make sure. And I'm concerned about that. So when I think about encouraging people to have friends outside the church family, I'm thinking, well, why not develop friends within the church family? And I think things have changed in the culture so that you don't have to all the time. Sometimes it was the same, we have to keep this professional distance. We had that taught to us. That was taught to me. You're the pastor, you keep professional distance. But you need friends within the church family. And I think different people relate differently to people, and churches most of the time understand that. But I get it, and I understand that as pastors, that there are times when we need to develop friends, and I think among our peers, so that we have people we can really talk with and draw in on life's simple things and the things that are super complicated.
One of the things that I've noticed being part of a community like the Well, where there's many different denominations and faith backgrounds
Sure.
Involved, is that you sometimes gain a perspective that you may not have had
Right.
before on certain elements of leadership, certain elements of the application of faith and how to deal with things. Have you experienced that? Like, we know we've got Pentecostals and Baptists, and we have some Catholics, and we have some Anglicans and Mennonite brethren, and so on and so forth. What blessing has that brought?
Go ahead.
Well, I think, is that like there's like we're just not all the same, but there's a richness in that, and it goes, I think, beyond the denominational background or how you're brought up, but even just the sheer experience. I remember first starting 20-some years ago as a pastor of a little non-denominational church, and I was like a little island unto myself.
Right.
And then one of the guys in the local ministerial took a mentoring course or a coaching course, and he needed to do a practicum, and so he invited me in on that, and it just developed this deep relationship, and I mean, he had more experience. It was a different denominational background. It was rich, and I just so benefited from that. And to that end, I try to pass that on now to I mean, it's my involvement with the Well. It's just part of giving back and playing that role to other people.
So, okay, here's a question for you. Given all that diversity of different denominations, we do fly the flag of Jesus Christ as Lord in our lives. That is clearly the flag we rally around. Is that safe?
Is that safe? Oh, I think so.
Have you ever had a gun pulled on you or anything thrown at you?
Not yet. No, I think that's because through Air Ministries, that's pretty clear. That's the flag we fly, and within that is great safety. I find I don't have to be worried about where are we going to go with all this diversity within this unity. It's under the lordship of Jesus, and I'm
it's interesting. When we started the Well many years ago, over 20 years ago, that was my first concern. It was like, all these different denominations, we're going to open the Word. This could be tough. And there's been over 20 years of blessing and unity and beauty and sharing, and it has been the richest of community that we're drawn to.
And I think what I've observed and what I've experienced is it's a mutual mentoring kind of an environment. And I think that's super important. And the place where people can talk about what they'd like to talk about and how they request prayer. And that's what I have observed and participated in is the value of that personal sharing and the prayer time. And I think what I've so appreciated, and right from the beginning that I got involved with Aaron, is the friends in ministry. It's that whole concept of our peers. We are there to help, encourage, bless, serve one another, and to try to inspire people in their ministries, not just in their own lives, recognizing the complexities of everything people have come through and are in the midst of.
It's like a spiritual beachhead, isn't it? When you think about an advancement in war, we know we're in a spiritual battle moving forward God's kingdom.
Right.
It's an amazing place to have a safe place to retreat to be built up and encouraged so you can go back out and serve again. Our next question is, can a leader who is surrounded by the people they serve, like congregation members of the church staff, still experience social isolation when they're not connected to outside friends and peers? If so, what are the risks of leading from such isolation? Sweis?
The risks of leading from isolation. I mean, Harry and I were talking about it on the way down today. Is like, if it wasn't for this peer support, I mean, personally, I would have been sunk a long time ago. I would not have lasted. I need other people involved in my life. Like I already said, I think we can have friends in church, but yeah, I think it's very possible for us to lead and be so focused on leading the flock and our leadership teams that you just end up being all by yourself doing that work, and it's a dangerous place to be. Yeah, absolutely. It's one of the reasons, again, why I pour into this thing. Next Tuesday, actually, we're hosting a barbecue at Emmanuel Church for local church leaders to just connect leaders. So it's not just this meal, but it's like true fellowship. So there's a connection during the summer months to continue to travel together on this journey with Jesus. It's hugely important.
I think giving people permission, just give people permission to be open, to be vulnerable, to talk about what's really going on, and to not be judged, but to be supported, to be prayed for, and to know that there is that kind of support. Because I think what can happen is if people isolate themselves, they can build a wall around themselves, and then they live in their head rather than really living out in the reality of their lives. And I would say, I would like to see this happen more in marriages as well. Leaders who are talking, to be open and to ask for prayer support in their marriage, in their family life, the dynamics of, now I'm a grandfather, well, what does that look like? And, and what's my role in all of this? And how do I understand? But not just to pull myself back, but to somehow be open enough to be vulnerable. And that can be difficult, but we're called upon to bear one another's burdens. And we're called upon to encourage one another, to love one another, to pray for one another. The one another's in scriptures are many.
Well, and I like what you said in carrying one another's burdens. I was in the Smithsonian Institute one time and saw the podium of the President of the United States, and it says, "The glorious burden." And that actually struck me deep. The glorious burden. And that's what really ministry and serving God is. It's glorious.
It is.
But there is a cost that comes with it. And that's what I talk about, that spiritual beachhead, being able to go in and have that burden borne with others. Because there's nothing like someone who knows what it is to walk the road you're walking.
But you know something, what I'm concerned about these days is we hear so much about the complexities and how tough ministry is, and it's this and it's that. It's the joy that we need to be able to convey. We talk about at Acadia about bringing people in, training them. You're entering into preparing for one of the most beautiful and joyous experiences of your life. Will it be tough? Sure. Is anything else tough in life? Sure. You want to be a doctor? It's going to be tough. Want to be a teacher? Doesn't matter. Ministry, though, watching the Holy Spirit work in the lives of people to draw them to Christ, or to repair relationships in a family, the power of forgiveness, God does that. What could be better to be a part of? You become part of a global enterprise, a wonderful local enterprise. Anyway, I get excited about ministry, but I know it's hard. I know it's hard. But is there any life like it? There is not. But don't be isolating. Open yourself up. Invite others in.
So my concern in all this is that we know this, and the folks who are watching this at these different wells, they know this.
Right.
But there are obstacles, and to invest in this, it requires a certain level of we got to make this a priority. It's just not going to happen.
No,
it gets crowded out.
It's so easy to find things that come in and rob you of that focus.
Sure.
No, that's huge. Well, we have a couple of minutes left, and our last question is, what practices can you recommend to leaders without strong social networks or who find themselves in contexts where it's difficult to build or maintain social connections? How can we foster the relationships that we have today? Harry?
I think you don't need many relationships. That would be what I would say. You don't need many, but you do need some. And you need, like you just said, you need to work at it. And there's no reason with all the technologies that we have available to us. We discovered that even through the pandemic, the power of Zoom, the power of the Spirit in Zoom, we can still be connected, but it takes intention. What were you just saying about that, about taking intention? To be intentional, I think you said.
Yeah, you got to give a priority. It's
Right.
I mean, so each time the well takes place in the valley, I have to make time for it. Something has to give, something has to wait, and there's always a bit of a battle over that, but it's just too important to me, so I'll do it. And I think it really requires that kind of importance in a leader's life.
Yeah, and it does mean you take the initiative to be a friend.
Yeah.
Not just wait for somebody to be a friend to you, but you take the initiative to be a friend.
Yeah.
And you make that phone call, or you make that email, or you write that text, or you want to get together with somebody for coffee, just to check in and to be a friend. I think that that's really important. I really get concerned when people live within themselves or within their small unit of their family without even one other peer in ministry. That would be a hard thing. I think the people who are at the well know that. That's why they're at the well.
Yeah, absolutely. I would add one thing to this that I've come to realize these last years, is to be attentive to the Spirit in this whole thing. And even if you're a regular well attendee or participant, that you're attentive to that whisper, and this name comes to mind, either in prayer throughout the day, and it's like to respond to that, to make that phone call. And that number of times I've done that, where it was just the right time. It's just a gift from God that He reveals these names to you, and but it requires that we respond.
Excellent.
Gentlemen, thank you for sharing the morning, and God's blessing on you as you go to your small groups and follow the discussions around the table.
Hey, before we jump into conversation, I wanted to say thank you so much for checking us out at The Well today. And if this content has blessed you in any way, we want to invite you to consider partnering with us financially. If you'd like to give, you can visit us at aaronministries.com/give. And two other ways that you can support us is by praying for the ministry that's taking place here regularly and sharing our digital resources with people in your own leadership network. So, with that being said, let's jump into small group conversation.